Okay, well, welcome everyone to the Fairfield Carnegie Museum. My name is John Godwin. I'm on the board of directors here, and I get the opportunity tonight to talk to Dolores Graf about her family farm. And the Graf family farm is a heritage farm. It's over 150 years old. 1865 in the Lockridge Township, and the original acres are 40 acres. And they farm with AC tractors and machinery. I knew how to throw that in there at the start. And right now, we're just going to let Dolores talk a little bit better, more on that in-depth family history.
Just in recent years, the tractors.
What's that?
Just in recent years, the tractors.
Okay.
What I'd like to do tonight is to talk a little bit about the buildings and what the buildings are that are still there. And all of them are still there. Some of them are not in good shape. But the buildings, but then more than that, I want you to be able to feel what it was like to be on a farm in 1865 instead of being today, and then show you what we're attempting to do, what I'm attempting to do with the place today. So we're going to bring it up to the present also. And this is the Graf family farm, and on this sheet, and she's going to take some pictures, and so it'll be on the video also. But this is the Graf family farm that was an aerial photo, and I don't know what year that was. Maybe Lee knows, but I don't know what year it was. But it shows the farmhouse here that is still there, just like that. The 1899 barn. That was a barn raising and was lumber that was sawed by Bill Rauscher, and some of you know him, not the young Bill, Bill, and they didn't call him senior, but he was Bill. And then the barn in the back, which was an open barn where we could throw down hay, and the little shed that's over here on the side is where we milk cows. At 4:30 every morning, we were out there. We got up at 4 o'clock every morning, and at 4:30 we were out there milking cows, 13 cows by hand. And then we carried all the milk into the house and separated it and sold cream so that we'd have a check coming in every 2 weeks so that we could keep the place going. And so that's the type of thing that I want you to recognize. There was a thermometer on the post that I put up, and the hottest it was 108 degrees, and the coldest was minus 24 one morning when we were out there. And I did bring a flashlight along to put in my mouth, because on this 1899 barn, on the west side, there was a light. That is 2 lots over from where we were milking. And the cattle would be we'd bed them down in that open shed that was out here, and then we had to throw the cow piles out so that we could milk. And so you put a flashlight in your mouth, and then you go, and there's a 6-pronged fork that has no handle in it. I wore the handle out, I think. No. It has no handle. So I want you to go down and see the display, because Lee and a lot of people have put in a lot of stuff. Lee Bradley, do all of you know Lee Bradley? Have put in a lot of things, and so I want you to be able to see those also. So what I want to do is also then help you to feel what were the Grafs like. And some of you are Grafs, so you know what we're like today. But we are what we are because of our ancestors. We really become what we are because of our ancestors. None of us knew John Veit Graf, who was born in 1841. I kind of like that, because 100 years later, I was born in 1841. And he's buried in the Four Corners Cemetery, and there's a big grass area in there. And on Memorial Day, my dad took a mowing scythe, and he mowed that all by hand. and around the graves. And I was always so excited that my great-grandfather was born the same year I was. Of course, 100 years difference, but anyway. So our history really starts in 1941 when John Veit was born in Germany. And Veit means, I want you to know what, I don't know, I didn't know him, but think, it's a German name that was used a great deal, and it meant lively. So, and I think you had to be lively to leave your homeland, and in 1949, he came with Heinrich Graf to the United States when he was 8 years old. But to come to a different country, to a country and to a whole new area that you'd never seen before, I think you had to be pretty lively. So I kind of like that idea that his name had that. And I had never heard Veit before. I had never heard that name before. I had to look it up in the German dictionary to find out what it meant. And this is the family this is John Veit. In 1864, he married Louisa Catherine Schneider. That's a good German name, too. She was from Germany also in 1864. And then when did the farm, when does it say the farm started?
1865.
1865.
Much longer after.
They came and they bought the farm. All that was there was the log cabin. Now, the log cabin is the southeast corner, and many of you have been in it many times. It is the southeast corner of the house, and it is still the southeast corner of the house. It was and is the living room, or the front room, whatever you want to call it. It was a two-story log cabin that had been built there 3 years earlier. And so still to go upstairs, you have to go through that living room to get upstairs. And the steps are all worn. And the top step, we're going to have to reinforce from the bottom because think, John and Louisa had 7 kids that they raised there in that log cabin. I don't know when they added on 2 rooms to the west. And so these windows here are those 2 rooms, about 25-foot long rooms, and they never divided them up. They never divided them up. They were all one room. Charles, the son of John, Charles here, was our grandfather. The boys slept upstairs in the big room, and the parents, our grandparents, and I assume that maybe Louisa and John slept in the log cabin, and the girls, there were 2 girls and 5 boys, slept upstairs. There were 7 kids, but one of them passed away. There are only 6 here in this picture because John George or George John, it's written both ways. I don't know which was the first and the second name, but they called him George. He's buried at Four Corners there in the children's area. At 6.5 years of age, he died of either the croup or the whooping cough. Grandpa Charles, his brother, used to tell me that, and realize he died when I was 12 years old, but I bet I've heard this story 20 times. George, I had a brother George, And I played ball with him, and we would sit on the floor and spread our legs out. And he said, I would always roll the ball to George so he didn't have to reach over, so it would go between his legs so he didn't have to reach over. So I think that George may not have been very strong, maybe had respiratory problems. Do you see how you kind of figure out some of those things from what you've been told? You don't know. I don't know. I think he probably died of whooping cough. And the basis that I have for that is when I developed whooping cough, and Grandpa and Grandma, we were living in the house that had been built for John and Louisa, our great-grandparents. That's where I grew up, on the same farm. And down the road, and some of you know how far that is, they could hear me whooping. I had whooping cough so bad. And Grandpa, I never understood. Grandpa, I didn't think I was going to die, you know. It was terrible, but I wasn't worried. But Grandpa was just beside himself that I had whooping cough. And now I understand. Just the other day when I read this, when I read what you had in yours, he died of whooping cough, you know. And so I suppose he thought I was going to die, you know. But anyway, I tell you those things because I want you to take your own history, your own family history, and figure out things. And I know I was a teacher for so long that you take the facts and the things that you can collect, and then you figure out what happened, because nobody's there to tell you. But anyway, so he is not in this picture. There were 4 boys and 2 girls, and Louisa, who is in the back here, died in childbirth at 20 years of age. So John and Louisa, our great-grandparents, lost 2 of their children, basically, and were not able to have them until adulthood. You know, and any of you who've lost children know how really hard that is, even if they're 50 years old or so. That's really hard to lose them. And but that happened quite a bit in those days. Most families lost 1 or 2 of their children before they got to be adults. So let's move to the next generation, which is Charles and Margaret. Charles Graf, Charles John Graf, obviously. Johns are in the family name over and over again. And Louisa's son, Charles. And this is a picture of Charles, our grandfather, and Margaret Porn Graf, who married Charles, and she were married in 1903. And they actually raised all 7 of their children into adulthood. And my father was the oldest. He was born in 04. Harlan was born in 06, and you people can tell when Aunt Marie and Edith and everybody was born. But and they lived to a good age, and they were called Charlie and Maggie. They weren't called Margaret and Charles because they were an important part of the community. Grafs became important parts of the community. Louis Graf started the Lutheran Church in Lockridge, was a charter member of the Lutheran Church. I didn't know that in Lockridge. He was on the city council and everything. They always took an important part in education and in the community. The other aspect that they just had a great love for people and for the land. Love was a very important part, and I'm going to finish with that in a few minutes, with something that happened years ago, and then last year, this shirt is a part of it.
There's a nice picture upstairs. It says Grandma Maggie, and it's got her in a pair of overalls And working out in the
chickens.
In the chickens.
In the chickens.
Yep.
And I hated to do any work. You talked about chores. I hated to do the chickens. I hated to gather the eggs. I didn't like to do anything with the chickens. I milked the cows, and I slopped the hogs and all that. And I plowed and planted and did all of that work. But I did not like to do the chickens. So my dad said, Grandma cannot go down there. She's going to fall and in the chicken house sometime. Now that I'm 83 years old, I understand how people treat you when you get old. Grandma lived to be 94 years old, you know. And anyway, she would go and feed the chickens while I was milking. And so then Dad would say, "Did you get those chickens fed?" And I'd say, "Yeah." You know, because, and then I didn't like to separate milk. That I can't cook because I can't stand and watch something just moving in a bowl. And so she would separate, and then she'd say, go in with Grandpa, and I have some huckleberry pie for you. How many of you remember the huckleberry pie? And I want that recipe book that somebody's put together, Peterson put together, the family one. It isn't a book?
You don't cook.
No, but I wanted to see because it's all on sweets, and we loved sweets. But anyway, maybe you're getting a little feel for what the Grafs were like there from that, and that's what I like. John and Louisa continued to speak German their entire life. They spoke German, and on my side of on my mother's side of the family, they also, my grandparents came from Germany, and Grandma Graf and Grandma Meyer would try to talk. And I learned that there's a high German and a low German. And the Graf spoke low German, and the Meyers spoke high German. So they would not understand each other when they talked.
Never heard of that.
And the word is Kauderbelch when you are not speaking correctly. So I majored in German and Spanish with my biology major, and I thought I knew how to speak. But I would call my folks on the party line that you all know about, and out there in the book you'll see the telephone and it says the first social media and networking. Because if you rang it many times, as what was rung when Victory number 8, country school, which I went to for 9 years, and it wasn't because I was so stupid. We had primary grade all day. We didn't have nap time or cookies and milk and all of that stuff, you know. I could have been a good person if I could have had all that social stuff. I'd have been more social, but I just, you know, didn't have it. And then we had first grade through 8th grade. And that school caught on fire. You ask about emergencies, tragedies. It started on fire. Well, I ran very, very fast. So I ran up to Ray Voorhees's, which was the next house up. Ray had given the land for that school, I understand. And our parents all went to Victory number 8. In fact, I found out that Charlie, the last years of his education in elementary, he went to Victory. I didn't realize that, did you? He went to the one up by Four Corners, I thought, where Henry and Henry Graf, his brother, bought the schoolhouse, and he fixed it up to live in, and then next to the schoolhouse, he built a red building that sat there until about 30 years ago, maybe. You all know where that was, and that was the broom shop. And the other thing that I want you to know is that Grafs were they worked together. They only kept their farms because they worked so hard at trying to get a variety of crops. So Henry, when he got married, he bought that acre with a school and made that into a house, and then he raised broom corn. How many of you know about broom corn? And made brooms. and they were superior brooms. So he, on that acre, he could make a living at that point. He did later buy 40 acres, and then later he bought 80 acres, like with the Graf farm. They kept, whenever they could get some money, they would buy, a little more land. And we do that today, right? But anyway, he also raised sugar cane. And I'd love to ask him, did he make sugar out of it? Now, Grandpa and Grandpa showed me how to do it. We would take the maple syrup out of the maple, and then we would cook that down. Well, I should say Grandpa would cook it down because my mother wouldn't have it in the house to cook down, and I didn't know how to cook even then. I would have burned it. So we would make maple sugar. But they did different things to be able to make crops. Now, one year, my father, Lester, the oldest, and Harlan next to him, they raised pickles. And they sold pickles. They made money by selling pickles to the pickle factory. I didn't even know we had a pickle factory in Iowa. And they sold their pickles to the pickle factory. And being kind of the weird person that I am, I put in here, and one might say that they got the Graf family finances out of a pickle. Now, you're supposed to laugh, because, but anyway, pretty poor pun and joke, but that's the way I am.
Was that just a one-year thing, or?
I was just 1 year
No kidding.
because it wasn't very successful. They grew it over where the trees are, where the 10 acres of trees are now, and they grew it on a hill. That the early settlers got the worst land, because they needed water, so they needed streams. What is that? Hills. And they needed logs for their log cabin. Those that came to the prairie made sod houses. Do you think that the southeast corner of our farmhouse, our heritage, would be there if it was a sod house? And how many of you been in one of those stinking places? Not doesn't smell very good. But they got the poorest land because they needed those things. So anyway, I diverged there a little bit. Sorry about that. So I want to look at then the Graf family. The family Bible is there. Jim Graf brought it up all the way from Albuquerque, did he, or where? Where did it come from?
Glenn has it.
Glenn has it.
Because he has a son. Jim does not have any sons.
Okay, Glenn Jr. has it. Good, and it has all the names written in it. It has all of our names written in it. There was a shelf in the front room, in the log cabin, from the window there over to the door that goes into that big room downstairs. There was a shelf. Every one of I shouldn't say everyone, at one time of the 20 grandchildren, all but 3 of us lived about 15 to 20 miles away from that farmhouse. And we would have, what did we do for fun? We would get together and put up sawhorses on the front porch and put boards on them. And then we'd have potluck. You remember that? And that was a fun thing. After church on Sunday, we spent a lot of Sundays that way. So we did things. You went to visit people. I don't know what people are going to do today because they only text and don't talk to each other. But we talked to each other. We visited. They loafed, Loaf. Do you remember the loafing? Does anybody remember what loafing was? They would go to a, you're shaking your head, tell us.
That's my job now.
Yeah, loafing. Yeah. They'd go to the general store. John Graf, the son of John Vett, and a brother of Charles, he owned the Four Corners store. And when my dad graduated from 8th grade, my dad just had an 8th grade education, my grandmother Graf only had either a 3rd grade or a 6th grade education because she needed to stay home when Leo and Pete, her twin brothers, were born and take care of her mother, so she had to quit school. And so some of them didn't get to go. Bill Graf, who was another generation in our generation, he wanted to go to school, and his dad said, "No, you're on the farm. You're going to work. You have to work on the farm. I can't spare you." He was the oldest son, and he couldn't go to school. Some of us in later years got to go to school places. They wanted education, but they had to have people working, and it took everybody working together. And I often think if we could teach today one lesson to anyone, it would be learn to work together. Because when you learn to work together, love develops between you. You iron out your differences because you're working, you're working toward a cause. And you don't have the hatred and all of that seems to develop when you don't have those sort of relationships. So those are some of the things that I wanted to say, and the love that my grandfather gave me. Grandpa was always there. He would sit on the floor of the porch, and we would play with a marble. And a few years ago, we were going to sort my stuff, and there was a big marble like that in the top of the box that we were going to sort, and the person in the room remembers this. And I said, oh, that's my shooter. That's my shooter. That's Grandpa and my shooter. And she slammed the lid down, because I have about 50 boxes to sort. And she said, and I had to hear a whole half-hour story about that shooter and how we would take that and shoot. And you see the marbles in that case? So think about that when you see the marbles. That shooter is in a box out in my shed down there on the farm. And I don't know where it is, otherwise it would be there with the marbles that we used in that glass jar that you see. I hope you enjoy the things that are in that case. We selected them for reasons. They have more meaning than what you can think about. But we grew up in a wonderful family, a family that were not radical. I don't call them religious because they never showed off their religion. They never, tried to convert everybody to what they believed. They grew up Lutheran. Most of the grandchildren were confirmed and baptized in the Hope Lutheran Church at Germanville. That was founded in 1845, and were married. Many of them were married there, in that church. Many of you were married in that church. Church was very important, and they believed very firmly that Jesus Christ came and suffered a horrible crucifixion for us to be able to, and then a resurrection, and went to prepare a place for us. And so this part of our life here on earth, we cannot earn our way. I don't know any Grafs that thought they could earn their way to heaven, but they know that they have the faith that I go to prepare a place for you. So this life, is really short. All of this was really short. For some of them, 6 years is all they got to live. But we have eternal life to look for that is a continuation of this life. And I want to close with the love part that is in that case and relates to why this shirt is here. I was the 1938 tractor in 1956. My dad decided that we should farm that farm, and we needed to have, they'd sold the horses at the sale. All we had was 2-row equipment and horse equipment, but we had to have a tractor.
Before you do that, can I jump in? I see a bill of sale up there in the case.
Yeah.
Is that when they sold all the?
They sold the horses and everything. And I don't have a date on that. It was in the 50s. It was 1950,
okay.
Between 1950 and 53. I thought it was 53, and I have someplace a bill of sale of everything that was sold in some of those boxes. I should live so long that I get them sorted, but I know that all of you will come and sort through the boxes. Please don't throw away little marbles or anything like that. As Rosemary said, you're going to keep all of this stuff, so there's no use in sorting. But yeah, they sold everything, and they sold, and then when Grandma died, why everything was sold.
And that's when they bought the tractor after that?
And in 56, that was.
a few years after.
That was, Grandma didn't die until 1974. She died. Grandpa died in 54.
Okay.
So 20 years. But they sold everything. And we needed a tractor to be able to farm. And my dad had gone to a sale at Germanville, and there was a coon hunter there. Some of you know him, Halseel, the name Halseel. And he had a rifle, and I wanted a rifle. I wanted a rifle so badly, and they cost $25. We never had $25 to spend. And so my dad went to the sale, and he said to Cheney, the auctioneer, that rifle is so old, it won't bring much probably. I'd like to buy it for my daughter. She's wanted a rifle for a long time. And Cheney said, oh, I don't know, a lot of people have been looking at it. I think it's going to bring quite a bit. And Dad said, well, it's okay, I won't be able to buy it. Cheney started that rifle at $5. My dad told me, I was in school, I didn't even know it, and that he was going to even try to buy it for me. Started at $5 instead of $25 would have been a good price, to start it at even. And the guy goes, you know how they did at the auctions? And by the way, auctions were wonderful things in those old days. Yep. Raise your hand, yep. And so Dad was ready. Cheney goes, $8? Dad goes, yep. He said, sold to that man right there, $8. I had that rifle. This is not bragging, I was a good shot. I put bottle caps on the hedge posts across from our house, stood on the road, shot across the ditch, and I could hit those bottle caps with that rifle. I was good. Anyway, so my dad went to try to buy a tractor. He didn't, we lived in the grandparents' place, He didn't own anything. My dad never owned a piece of land in his entire life. And nobody would sell him a tractor because he didn't have any collateral, he didn't have anything put against it, and he didn't have any money. And he found a fella up on the highway north of Fairfield that was wanting to start farming. And so he went up there. That guy would get old tractors, 38, this was 1956, so you know how old this tractor is that's on my shirt, is a 38. The wide the old style. Anyway, he said, Lester, you have good livestock. I want some hogs to start a hog operation here. I'll come down, I'll pick out some of your hogs, and I'll trade that for this 38 tractor that I have. It was all beat up and everything, but who cared? I mean, it ran.
Still ran, yeah.
And so he came down at night. We had that one light on the barn that I told you about. Did that for a reason. One light on the barn. The hog lot was the west lot over beyond, by thee and beyond where we milked the cows. So he took a flashlight out and he picked out 3 gilts, 3 young female hogs that hadn't had pigs, and ran them into the next lot where he could load them. And he came over and he said, okay, Lester, he said, I want these 3 gilts and that rifle that you bought a couple years ago at Germanville. And my dad said, no, that rifle is my daughter's. She shoots it all the time. She loves that rifle, and you cannot have that rifle. She will not give that up. She's not going to give that up. She waited too long for it. And he said, nope, got to have the rifle and 3 gilts. Dad said, I'll give you 4 gilts. Nope. Dad said, you will not be able to pass this up. I'll give you 5 gilts. No, he said, 3 gilts in the rifle, or it's no deal. So I motioned to my father to come over to the gate, by the house, and I'm going to put that fence and gate back up. I'm going to get the concrete posts. Instead of buying posts or getting posts, my grandfather made concrete posts and then put hooks in so you can drop a nail down and you can put wire on it. It's going to look exactly like that. Anyway, so I told him, come over here, Dad. I said, that rifle isn't going to plant our crops, and that's what's on this sheet. And it's by this tractor last year when it was Tractor of the Year, and it'll be by it at Old Threshers again this year. Because I said, I'm going to go get the rifle. And he said, no, you're not. You did not go against what your father said at that age. You never, whatever they said, that's what you did. And I said, Dad, I've got to go. And I ran up and I got the rifle and gave the rifle, and we got this tractor. So when I say this tractor means something to me, you see it does. So when you come, you're going to see this sign. And what I wrote down at the bottom was, as father was protesting the daughter's decision, she said, Father. My father was born in 04. He never kissed us. He never hugged us. But we knew he loved us. And that's the way the Grafs were. They weren't demonstrative. I never saw Grandpa and Grandma kiss. Did you? They didn't show their religion. They lived it. They lived it every day, and they lived their love every day. But we knew he loved us. And I said, Father, the love you have just shown me is so great. I put all capital letters, as Rosemary will tell you. I do that. That when I am 100 years old, this is exactly what I said in 1956, I will still remember it. And those of you who don't know me, I have this real problem because I remember every detail. I can tell you exactly where we were standing by the gate. I can tell you exactly what we were doing. It's a curse sometimes, but anyway, and then my stories get too long. And in parentheses I put, I am now 82. That was last year. And I do remember that sacrificial love. That is the Graf heritage that you were born into. That's the Graf heritage that you have. That's the hope that you were born into for your own lives, all our lives, and the hope for eternal life. That's it. I will show you pictures here This is what the log cabin looks like. Inside, the plaster fell off from the door over to the kitchen. The kitchen was built in 1917,
Okay.
onto the log cabin to the north. And it has a cistern in it. And they used that to put their butter down in, and had the first running water. I told you they were very clever. By lifting and lowering the lever on the pitcher pump, and I'm trying to find a pitcher pump, they have retro ones painted red. I want an old one to put in there. If I have to put new leathers in it, that's okay. They're a pitcher pump. They squeaked. As you moved them, that's the way it sounded. Anyway, they squeaked, and you lifted it, and they put a bowl under it, a porcelain bowl. You remember that? And they washed dishes. You did not wash your hands there. You washed your hands outside before you came in on the wash bowl that was outside, and a cistern right there to get water, and a comb so you could comb your hair. I never used that, but you can tell that from my hair. And a towel hung on there. That's going to be all back there one of these days. But this is what it looks like from the kitchen door over to the wall. So that's going to remain that way. This is the chinking that is in there. And this is the house as it looks today. I put on siding and a roof. The kitchen is going to be a 1950s because I have the terrible looking table. Does anybody remember those tables that, somebody help me, Formica were they? That we had a yellow one with all modeled and then it had a metal band around it, and you pull it out and you had another leaf in it. That's going to be in there. The 50s stuff is going to be in that room. So those of you who are here tonight, I'm inviting you in about 3 years, because I've gotten nothing done yet, very much. The log cabin will be the log cabin. It has never had heat in it. It's always been our front room. It's never had heat in it. They took the fireplace out. How can you have heat? There's one light in the ceiling because they could run a wire over to that. And the only heat that was upstairs was the grill that was up there. And when we kids would be playing, grandkids would be playing up there, we sometimes, I think Everett, one of our cousins, almost went through the floor one time when he was a kid, because if you stepped on it wrong way, it would slide.
Oh.
And it was a hole about that big. It is. It still is a hole. And I had to go buy a new grate because somebody stole the toilet out of the house, out of the bathroom, and somebody stole the grate out of the house. And it wasn't any Graf that did it, because no Graf would do that. But, when a house stands empty for about 20 years, it's not good.
Now, on the original picture up the stairs, it shows a porch along the whole front. Is that what you're going to do again, or
No,
I think it did anywhere.
This is the porch, and this
Okay.
is the same size porch.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Actually,
There's a bracket up there, too.
it's about 6 inches wider. We never had chairs on that porch. Grandpa always sat on the floor. I don't know why we didn't have chairs, but there isn't much room for chairs. We put up those tables, and the women would stand behind them, but remember, the tables were right up to the edge of the porch. There was enough room for all 19 kids, however. Can you remember that? You were pretty young. We still were shocked oats, and I tell the old threshers people, and thank you, Terry, for being here. I tell the old threshers people, even in my generation, people did not thrash oats. They didn't shock it. I got to set the 2, 4, 6, 8 shocks up, but I wasn't big enough to make the cap on the shocks. I never got to be big enough. But then Ray Voorhees would come up with his steam engine, and we would thrash. And we had a haystack. And we kids one Sunday decided to be fun to go on the back side of the haystack because we knew we weren't supposed to be on the haystack. And we get to the top, but we wouldn't go clear to the top because they could see us from the porch. So we'd go pretty well up, and then we'd slide down. But Everett got a nosebleed. Poor Everett. He was always getting hurt or something. Everett Deers was always getting hurt. And he got a nosebleed, and we had to go. And when he got a nosebleed, it was really bad, and we had to go. And all of us were on the porch. Now, it goes around the side here, and it goes front, and it goes around the side. We were sitting there. And I always said that was the first time out. We didn't know about time out, because we never had time out. But
So they put you, huh?
that's where they put us, and we sat there. And I think we sat there for 3 days before we got. You know how long that
I
gets?
can imagine.
Yeah. We do exaggerate. Anyway, this is what it looks like now. The inside is a mess. This is going to remain this way because I want people to see that you had to chink these. A log cabin was a lot of work. And I have Spencer Barton is going to, he's a chemist and a museum archivist, and he is going to take some of this chinking, analyze it chemically. Then we're going to go out where I was driving this 38 tractor one night at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to farm in between teaching at 7:30 to 10 o'clock at night at Westland. And ran into something, and it stopped me, and it was clay. And it stopped me, and through this tractor, I was going this way, and it threw the tractor into the plowed ground that way. Any of you have moldboard plows that had pull type? The levers, you have to, in order to get it to trip out, you have to be moving forward. I worked hard trying to get that out of that. But I think that's the clay that they used for the chinking on the log cabin. And I also would like to ask Grafs and any of you who have old farms, what questions can we ask Spencer Barton to look up to find out all the details of? I'm going to have him go through and find out who owned that land way before any of the Grafs did. I think that would be interesting. He's also going to do a timeline with the Grafs, and I bought the farm from my grandmother, sold it to me January 26, 1970, and so I've owned it since then. I want to save that farm. I'm meeting with Josie Thomas the 8th of this month. She thinks there is a way that you can save a farm or a piece of property for 120 years after I die. From the time I die, 120 years. I said, not 200 years? And then she looked at me, because I'm always crazy like that, you know, I want a little bit more, you know. But 120 years can be set aside. That may be that we'll do, I don't know. Legally, we've got to do it some way legally. May have to have a board. I may be asking for some of you to be on a board to manage it. I'm 83 years old. I'm gonna live another 20 years, but I don't know when I'll make it more than 20, you know.
It'll be around 300 years for the family farm then. That'd be a
Yeah.
nice little.
Well, when it's 200, I want to get the 200, but I said maybe 175 we could get it, you know. But they're talking about doing 50 years. Grafs had hardly gotten started at that time.
What's the address?
The address is 33, I got to look at the address because I I always mess it up. It's 195th Street. Do you know, if you go to Lockridge and go west of Lockridge, straight through Lockridge, go past the cemetery on the right? If you're, any of you go, yeah, going west out of Lockridge.
west, okay.
Yeah, go west out of Lockridge. You'll get to an underpass. And by the way, Lester and Harlan Graf built the forms for that concrete underpass for the railroad. So when trains were going, we would always stop under it and let the trains roll over us. And it makes a real neat sound. So if the trains are going, just for the fun of it, do it sometime. But they did that. That road is blacktop and it goes clear out to Four Corners. When you get to the Four Corners, you turn right onto a gravel road, and about a mile down that road, you'll find it. If you know where Camp Golden Valley is, that I planted 39 acres of prairie 3 years ago. 20 acres of it is along the road that turns and goes to Camp Golden Valley, to white-tailed deer, wedding things now. And no, I'm not getting married again. I can't, on my tombstone, I can't get all the names on, so.
So the address is
Is 30, Rosemary, do you know it off?
315,
3315,
190.
195th Street. I'll take you out there and show you, because I want you to see the prairie, and I put in extra flowering plants, and the Lockridge Fire Department came out and helped me burn it. You know, you live in a wonderful place here in southeast Iowa. We just did Ragbri in Mount Pleasant. We're done with that, but you have something you want to do.
No, you right.
Everybody worked. Look how everybody worked on Ragbri. And everybody thought Mount Pleasant is the most wonderful place to come now. And we've gotten comments like that. It was the best place on any of the route on Ragbri. And our meatloaf was wonderful at the Methodist Church, but they didn't even let me put, sometimes we have it at Old Threshers, and sometimes they let me put the sauce on. They measure it out. They don't let me measure it out because it has to be the right amount, but they let me spread it so that sauce gets on there. But otherwise, people don't let me touch stuff because it ruins it.
Well, it's nice to hear that the family farm is still in progress.
It is
after all these years.
It's in a big progress.
And it's gonna be.
And I'm trying to save the 1899 barn. Ryan Barton is coming out, and the west side, we've got to have a foundation. I'm going to lose it otherwise.
Gotcha.
The foundation for the house is going to cost $62,000. Realize that those are just stones laid up for the log cabin. The east side of that is falling. Their stones are actually out of it even. And so, I mean, that's a lot of money. He's going to come and clean out the basement. We're going to save the old washing machine that Grandma got her hand in. Oh, and these people are unbelievable. Like Maggie was old, down in the basement washing with a roller type washing machine, Maytag. Tried to hang on to something that was going into the rollers, the two rollers to wring them out. The hand went in. All the skin off of her hand, her fingers, everything. They said, you will never be able to use that hand again. She quilted. The quilt out there was the quilt she made for my dad. Ruth, you said your mother had a bumblebee one? Hummingbird. Well, I got it. It was an insect, at least. A hummingbird one. She made a quilt for all 7 kids. She started making quilts for the older kids. Did Robert have a quilt? And did Roberta have a quilt? Because they were the oldest.
I don't think so. I think
Well, Margaret has, we lost Margaret, my sister, I have one sister only, and they lost their son, Carrie, you know. And anyway, to cancer. Anyway, the other day, and so I was with her, and she said, yeah, Grandma put together the blocks for the quilt. And I have the blocks, but she never got the back on or never got any quilting done, a back for it or the batting, you know, or anything. But she has the pieces that were sewed together. So I wonder if she gave, I wonder why she gave that to her before that was done. But maybe it was maybe she got it at the sale, I don't know. Maybe it was a piece, I don't know. But anyway, she has that. And I said, I think Lee's got but you didn't get the quilting thing. Grandma would quilt at 4 o'clock in the morning when our window faced, there were 4 rooms in our house. A bedroom on the east, the living room, a bedroom on the east, and the kitchen. That was all we had. And we never had running water until in 1965. I'd been teaching at Wesleyan, and I put in running water and bought a wash machine for the folks, an automatic wash machine for the folks. And that was the first. And I think your folks went forever with that until they moved to town.
We never had running water unless we ran after.
Yeah. But you had a well right out. And as my mother said, we don't need running water in the house. We have a cistern right here. We can go down in the field and get our drinking water. And we don't need that. We're perfectly capable of going to the bathroom outdoors.
I see. All right, and then did you have anything else to
No.
add?
That should end it.
Yeah, no, that's great. We appreciate it. All these items here are up at the 3rd floor of our museum in the display, and that will be on display all through August.
August, yeah.
It will be. And for those of you watching online, we invite you to the Carnegie Museum here in Fairfield to see the farm displays each month. We're located 1 block south of the Fairfield Square at 112 South Court, and our hours are Tuesday through Friday, 12 to 4. And I want to thank everybody for attendance and for Dolores as well for helping us out with this presentation. Thank you to you watching on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe down below on our YouTube channel. And also please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X under Carnegie Museum Fairfield, all one word. And we'll see you at the museum. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.